Tonight I'm going to speak about an interesting subject that I don't mean it to be morbid or depressing in any way, because no matter how bad you have it in life, at least you're alive. You know what I'm saying? I mean, of course, people have frustrations and conflicts for instance, I always say everyone has shit in their life. It depends on how deep it is. And so, with that, take it for what it is. Of course, we all have our problems in life. Where everyone is not problemless, if that's such a word. But what I like to just speak about, and it's not going to be a very long video, but this time it's actually going to be a short video. And that is, you ever wonder, like I'm 56 years old, and I was born in 58. I lived through the 60s. I lived through the 70s. I lived through the 80s. I lived through the 90s. I lived through the 2000s, and now I'm in the 2000 teens. And there's so many people in the world that have died. Could be by accident, could be natural, could be by murder, could be by anything. Anyway, millions, tens of millions have died, including all types of mammals and all types of fish and all types of insects have all died and perished. And yet here I am, right now, alive before you, speaking to you on YouTube. And I know someday, hopefully it's a couple decades from now, I hope, but you never know when you do go. And then someone else will talk about you in past tense. When you pass on, you become just a memory of someone else. That's all you are. All you end up being is a memory. Even a person that visits you at the grave, that person is remembering all the things that this person did or was or could have been and all this other stuff. But you're always looking at a person that has passed on in past tense. And someday, like I said, hopefully a couple decades from now or so, but someday I will die as everyone else on YouTube that watches this, or anyone, from the president on down, from the UN General Secretary to the guy that is in the space station up there in the stratosphere, or outside the stratosphere actually, will all perish and die. And, there are some people that are religious that think, well, they live on, their souls live on. You go into this other level of being or whatever the hell have you. But considering I'm an atheist, I know when I die, that's it. I don't believe in reincarnation. I don't believe in gods and all this other stuff. So when I die, that's it. And it's not interesting. Well, it is interesting, but it's rather kind of strange in a sense that when you do die, someday when you do die, like I say, maybe hopefully in a couple decades or so, I die of natural causes, and hopefully it's not a painful death. That's really my fear is not death itself. My fear is the process of right before you die. In other words, will there be extreme pain involved? If you have a massive heart attack, or you get shot by somebody, you're walking down the street and someone else is having an argument and you wind up getting shot in the process, innocent bystander, and you die by a bullet. I mean, it could be anything, that you die in pain. So that's it's not so much a fear, but I guess it is, but it's more like that is something that I don't look forward to. It's not death itself, because I know then consciousness and everything comes to an end, so you're not aware of anything. It's just in that last few seconds or a minute or 5 minutes or whatever it may be. Hopefully it's not excruciating pain to when you get to that point of actual death. But nevertheless, and that's somewhat morbid and sort of depressing, but it's part of reality and it's part of life. Part of life is dying. Hopefully you die naturally. You're through old age. You live into your 80s or 90s, maybe even around 100 or over, as long as you're in good health, right? And hopefully you have mobility, and if you don't have mobility and you're stuck in your own bed at home, hopefully you're not in a hospital. I would hate to die in a hospital. Wow, that would be terrible. But to die in your own bed and not even have mobility, but to have your consciousness, and so you can still do things, but minimally, and try to enjoy and figure out the odds and the options around things, and try to enjoy the last years of your life, then, all for the good. But it's just the idea, why I made this video, it's just the idea that I and everyone else on Earth will someday experience dying, or the process of dying, an actual death, or an actual process of dying before you actually die. And it's what amazes me is that I am still alive, as everyone else that's watching this video, if anyone does, and all the people around the world that are living right now, presently, on June 5th, 2015 at 10:11 p.m. Central Standard Time in America, wherever anyone is at around the world, we're all alive now, and of course, probably in different ways and different processes, but nevertheless, we're all alive. And 150 years ago, those people were alive, and we were not. And then in another, 50 or 100 years from now, depending upon how old you are, but let's say a good 150 years from now, we'll be dead, and those people will live. And then those people will also experience what we will eventually experience, that is, process of dying and death. And on and on and on it goes. Of course, they have this thing, well, maybe someday you'll live forever. But eventually, you're going to die. Even those people that they freeze, they spend $1 million a year for upkeep or whatever it is. And I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, they freeze you at a certain temperature, and they keep you in that air, in that condition. And then let's say 50 years from now they solve, I don't know, maybe you died of lung cancer. So 50 years from now they have a cure for that. So they cure your lung cancer, but then of course you're going to wind up with another problem. What's going to happen is you're going to continuously whatever it is, you'll continually die, and they'll freeze you, and then they'll thaw you out and wake you up, and then cure you, and then you'll die of something else, and on it goes. And even those that say, well, we could slow down the dying process so people live forever, will find that gene, that chemical in our bodies to slow down the process. Well, eventually, even if you slow it down, so every 10 years is 100 years. So let's say you live 1,000 years old. Let's say you live for 1,000 years. Well, after 1,000 years, you're still going to wind up dying. I mean, they're going to have to figure out something which is insane. It's fantasy, it's science fiction stuff that you see in Hollywood, to have you live for 1 million years. And even if you lived for 1 million years, you're still going to wind up dying eventually. You understand? No one can ever live forever. That's crazy. That's insane. It's impossible to have you live forever. Everything dies. It's a process. Everyone goes through that process. Even if you lived for 7 billion years, on the 7th billion in one day, you're going to die. Yeah, it's crazy, but we have our fantasies, and keeps the doctors and the chemists at work, and having people freeze their bodies and going through all this crap. Eventually, you're going to die, and not only that. How about if they, I wrote a little story of this years ago. A guy wakes up, they wake him up, they thaw him out, they cure him of, I think it was like a brain tumor or something that I wrote. So they thaw him out, they cure him of his brain tumor. He's so happy, so relieved. He walks out outside the hospital, and he's in such a good mood. He's so happy, and he's crossing the street, and he's not even really thinking about what he's doing. He's so happy and in such joy. And he crosses the street to his car to go home and tell his wife and his kids how such a great, beautiful world that I live in, and the great, beautiful world that it is. And then out of nowhere, this 18-wheeler truck comes down the road. The driver is a drunk, and he's in a 25-mile-an-hour speed zone. He's going 80 miles an hour and runs them over and just splatters them all over the place. I mean, it's terrible. But anyway, it was a short story I wrote years ago. But the thing is, it can happen. They, let's say 500 years from now, they thaw you, and then you go into the street and you get splattered into hundreds of pieces. In other words, we all wind up dying eventually. Everyone will always have to go through that one way or another. If you don't die of this illness, it'll be another different type of illness. It's just life, that's life. But anyway, I don't want to make this too long, but I was thinking about, I think about this once in a while, and it's just, that's why you have to enjoy your life the best you can while you're alive, because once you're dead, it's over. And, of course, there are religious people out there that say, no, I get to live forever. Okay, well, so be it. But meanwhile, back on planet Earth, we all die. And you should be thankful that you're alive, because in 150 years from now or so, someone else is going to talk about you in past tense. They might come across your video on YouTube 200 years from now and say, oh, wow, look at this guy, And then that guy that watches that video in another 100 years, he or she will be dead, and someone else will be watching that person if they put a YouTube video up. And the cycle continues like that. So my point is, be thankful that you have your life, even if you're sometimes in a depressed state, or you're unhappy or frustrated, or there's conflict or anxiety or whatever have you. Always remember one thing, that you're alive, and 100 years ago some other guy died, even if it's by natural causes, and at least you're still alive. You're in the here and now, in this time and place. You're alive. And 50 years from now, whatever, it depends on how old you are, you're going to wind up dying. And then someone 100 years from now, like a child born yesterday, will be 85 in the year 2100 AD. That person will be 85 years old or so, and that person will wind up dying, and the cycle continues. So my point is, just try to enjoy the cycle as best as you can, because someday we all get to die, and that's just the way it is. That's reality. Part of life, part of living is dying, and try to make the best you can out of life before you die. Anyway, I let go of this little video, and you guys have a great night.